there's no formula or recipe, not for happiness, as you heard from Alex, but also not for life in general. It's not like you can say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and then I'm going to get there. Yes, you can build a resume saying if I am a straight A student and I do my SATs, it's a formula, but life has a way of throwing curveballs at you all the time. So everything I'm going to say, or any speaker here, ultimately what you have is yourself, your core DNA of who you are, the microbes, the bacteria that make up you. And then, yes, there's going to be influencers and people along the way, whether it's the lady who talked to Alex or my dad in my case or whoever, who are going to mold and help you. So I say that because in the fall of 2017, I left what was a lucrative and very comfortable job working for Jack Dorsey at a company called Twitter. I left the Silicon Valley and driven by the mission of healthcare, I can't think of another thing that's more important than probably solving world hunger. So I joined a company that was a unicorn, raised close to 500 million from VCs, and was supposed to be the next big thing. I was going to start a big group in the Silicon Valley, and I came there. So 7 weeks into my being with the company, the article hit, accusing our founders of manipulating records and deceiving and defrauding our investors. And this unicorn that I had joined that had so much promise was literally in free fall. And when that happened, of course, my friends and others from the Silicon Valley were like, hey, it's just been 7 weeks, just come right back. It's almost like you never went. And a lot of people left the company. I was pretty much the only person on leadership who was left there. And it was a flight or fight moment for me, and I chose to stay and fight. And in order to understand what gives you that instinct of knowing that you will either leave, and I'm not saying there's wrong or right, you could choose to leave and it's who you are, but in order to understand that, I think I have to take you on a journey back to the beginnings of where I was born and raised. I took a 23andMe DNA test. I guess I didn't need to. As you can see from that, I'm full on like southern India. So I'm from Tamil Nadu, but I was born and raised in Bangalore, which is now the Silicon Valley of India. And you see my parents there. So I grew up in what is called a joint family. My grandparents lived with us, and that's my mom and dad there. And my dad was an engineer and a frail person who could barely hold the awards he was given. So the thing about Southern India is I grew up in a very traditional family. And by that, what I mean is girls, we had to learn an instrument, or you learn to sing, you learn to cook, which I still haven't done, and then you get an education, you get married, and you have kids. But for me, I mean, I knew that was the path that everybody was recommending, but I did a lot of those things, but those are my two daughters you see on the screen there. But I also broke a lot of barriers, and while I was doing it, I didn't realize that's the core of who I am. I used to go horseback riding, something that girls didn't do in India. And I also did dirt drag racing of motorbikes. And my brother used to ride motorbikes, and I was like, hey, if you can do it, I'm gonna do it. And then I wanted to race. And my dad encouraged me, and I did race motorbikes, and I actually won some awards for doing it, but there was no category for girls, so I had to race with the boys. And through all of that, and I have scars from it, my mother's one concern was, hey, you're gonna fall, scar yourself, and nobody will marry you. I mean, I think it was genuine concern, but that was the kind of scenario I grew up in, but I was a risk taker at a young age, and I didn't even know. So now when I look back and say, hey, I was racing at 16, I feel like I can double down and do whatever life throws at me. The other big thing is, you know, what brought me to the United States was the curiosity of learning more, understanding more. So I came halfway across the globe. I was a visiting scholar at Stanford. I got married. In fact, I had my first child when I was still working on my master's thesis, which was not easy at all. And a couple of stories I want to tell you about being curious, right? My father, when I was a little girl of 5 years old, and I'm going to try this one in Tamil, and if there are any native speakers, please bear with me while I butcher this, but he used to have me hold a fist and say, Katrathu kai man alavu, Kalladadu ulahalava. What that roughly translates into is what you know is a fistful of sand, and what you don't know is everything else in the universe. And the reason when he was saying it, he'd say it to me frequently, and I'd just be like, oh my God, Dad, like, I'm sure all of you do all the time. And now when I look back at it, I am always curious about everything, like all the time. And I don't know that it was necessarily what he told me, but I always look for those kind of opportunities. And my professor in Indian Institute of Science, where I first started in Bangalore, would tell me, learn one new thing a day. And in 1 year, you'll know 365 things, or thereabouts, depending on the year, that you didn't previously know. And as students, you're thinking, geez, I'm learning like tens of thousands of things every day, which is true. But you're going to find once you leave, it becomes harder. You get into a rhythm. I'm going to work out in the morning, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to write code, or whatever it is you choose to do in your careers. And it becomes harder to find something radical, something revolutionary, something you didn't know. So I encourage you to try and learn one new thing, even after you leave this campus. Then, I finished my education, and then I started a startup. After the startup, I went to a company called Sun Microsystems. I have an electrical engineering degree, so I started my career in hardware. And one of the things that happened after being in hardware a few years, something went down, and one of our chipsets that we were shipping didn't ship on time, and I got nailed, or I took the heat for something that went down. I'm not saying I'm blameless, although I do feel like I was wronged. But it was a horrible time when I felt I was unfairly blamed for something. But what that made me do is I switched from hardware to software. And now looking back, hardware became a commodity and an industry that didn't exist. And software has been so great to me, and it's opened so many doors. So while what happened was such a negative thing, and I literally thought my career was done, I had to restart in software where I didn't have any experience. And so you think about it and you feel so wronged and so outraged, and you can either fold or you can stand up and fight. And I chose to stand up and fight. So one other piece of advice, life is going to throw you curveballs, but always get back up on your feet, because it's all you got, and life's too short. You have to, and you'll find that it actually opens so many more doors. And I will tell you 2 stories from that. One of my managers gave me constructive criticism at one time. I'd sit, and in hardware, I used to be the only girl in the room. And I would be shy and retiring, and so wouldn't say what I wanted to say. So one time she told me, hey, you always come to me with your ideas. Why don't you speak up in the room? And it's one of your downfalls that you don't. And now people tell me I haven't learned to shut up since. I talk a lot and put my point of view. And so don't be afraid. It doesn't matter if you're the only person in the room who's different. Doesn't matter what. If you have a point of view, don't speak on top of everybody else, and watch out for imposter syndrome, because you'll find a lot of it along the way. It's sprinkled throughout life. And the second one is one of my peers and colleagues who I really, really love at Oracle told me this. He said, check your ego at the door. Don't make it about you. Like when someone sends me a bad email or whatever it may be, I try to focus on, yes, I can write back a stinker, but is it actually going to help move the ball forward, or am I just going to feel better? And most times, pretty much all the time, it's just going to make me feel better. It's really not going to help the situation. So I've learned to take a deep breath and not make it about myself. And in many cases, I have to swallow a pill and say, wasn't fair, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on what's right. So check your ego at the door, I would say. And then, of course, from Oracle, I went to Twitter. And part of going to Twitter was I love the fact that the platform gives everyone a voice. Like anywhere in the world you are, it does give you a voice, and it amplifies and resonates. And I love that idea. So I joined Twitter, and the network that I've created from being at Twitter has been fabulous to me. I would encourage you, when you find a network and you find people, don't just reach out to them when you need them. Make sure you think about them and have coffee when you don't need anything from them. And similarly, you have to be there for them as well. I hope some of you will reach out to me, or maybe one day I run into you or we work together. So, you know, it's a lifelong journey where you're networking and then it goes viral. So please, you know, keep in touch with the people you know. That brings me full circle back to outcome health, which is, you know, one of the choices I made in my career, and I stand by it, and I feel like I have actually become a lot better for it. Because the last year we went through the crucible, literally, because we were sued by our investors. Well, the founders were anyway. I learned how to deal with lenders, onboarded a new board. Most importantly, like taking care of your employees and colleagues is nothing like it. Like ultimately that's the, excuse me, network you have, just like your friends in the circle of people you have here. The other interesting thing about the journey for me of coming to Outcome Health is the company is headquartered in Chicago. And so I left California where I had never been anywhere else. Think about it. I was in southern India where 80 degrees is cool. And then I went to San Francisco where 60 degrees is cold. And then I came to Chicago. And when the article hit in October, we were just heading into winter. And I had to stay because there was only me. And I braved the winters, didn't know a soul. And then I moved, and now I live in New York since 18 months or so. I do have some family in New Jersey. My sister-in-law's here to support me, but it was hard. Not just because of the physicality of winters and things like that, but you know, there are many lessons for me since the time when I came to Stanford. I remember saying things like, hey, do you have a torch that I can take to the library, when I meant flashlight, like little things like that. Learning to drive on the right side of the road, because in India it used to be on the left side. I know these seem like trivial things, but I'd get teased about it. Like I used to say I left my backpack in the boot or a dicky, which is what we used to call it, and people would be like, what the heck? Not only does she look different, but she also is strange. And then you learn like to adapt, and as a youngster, these little things matter so much, but when you pull yourself up, the grand scheme of things, it doesn't. And now I've got a really nice network of people who invite me over for Thanksgiving and like open their hearts and souls to me. So while the journey was hard and it's been complicated, I feel I'm so much better for it. We have an amazing VC investor pool who now know me. So one day, if I decide to do something on my own, I have a network. So you can still make lemonade when life definitely has dished me a lot of lemons, I can tell you. So now I have a team that supports me, my CEO and the rest of the crew, and which frees me up to come and give speeches like this one, for instance. And so I am thankful for that, thankful for the journey I've had. And at the end of it, here's what I want to leave you with, right? I read this phrase, which is attributed to Einstein, but nowadays with fake news, I'm not even sure he said it, but nevertheless, just go with me on this one. You know, he or she who never made a mistake never tried anything new. And that is so true. I've always found, like, every time I've stepped outside my comfort zone, and I hope this is true for all of you, while it's challenging, while it's difficult, it's always been the most fulfilling time of my life. And every time I felt like I'm starting to feel too comfortable, I've always tried to find something else where I can find something that's different. I encourage all of you to do that. The other person, I mentioned Steve Jobs earlier, the other person I hope all of you will look her up on the web is Carla Harris. She's a Wall Street banker, amazing, amazing speaker, and just a wonderful human being. She talks about this concept of advisors, sponsors, and mentors. I know all of you know mentors. Everybody talks about mentors and how you need a mentor, etc. But differentiating and distinguishing those three, I think, is very important, and it's been very useful for me as a tool. So an advisor is someone you go to when you need an expert to give you advice on a single topic. For me, it could be, how do I read a 10K? For you, it could be, how do I solve a differential equation? Or whatever it is. It's one question. You go to an expert who knows that, and you need advisors throughout your life, and I still do in everything I do. In fact, my brother-in-law, I was asking about a company that does analytics, and he's always my go-to person when I need something technical. And sponsors are those who are in a position of influence who have the ability to help you in your career or wherever you want to go. Let's say you want to be a congresswoman. Maybe you know somebody who can say, hey, there's an internship available. Let's think of this person. So to a sponsor, you show them the best side of you. You tell them your accomplishments, tell them your strengths, tell them all the things you do well, but not necessarily all the dark, things you don't do so well. But a mentor is someone, it's like my grandmother, who you can tell them everything. They know your flaws. They know what you're great at. They can give you constructive criticism, tell you, hey, like me, I'm not organized. I'm the most disorganized person. But you can get constructive criticism and they can help you. So like I said, I'll leave you with 3 things. So I'm gonna leave you with 3 things. 1, you're not alone. While you do hold the reins of everything, pivotal moments in your life, plus people and influencers are with you along the way who are gonna mold who you become. 2, when life throws you curveballs or you have failures, use that as an opportunity. Find something great about it that teaches you something and stand back up on your feet. Come back from your heel to your toe. The 3rd and most important, be an eternal learner because there's nothing like it, like always. And I think when I'm 80, if I make it to that, I'm probably still gonna be like, oh my God, where can I go and listen to some talks? So I hope I'm a work in progress. I hope you remain one. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you.